FTX seemingly collapsed in a day, but the bankruptcy process does not play out as quickly. We got two stories here. First up, FTX users potentially targeted in a possible phishing attack. This is an email sent to users from an official looking address saying reset your password. It's a little bit suspicious, a little bit sketchy. We're not sure at this point, based on the reporting, if it's real or if it was an attack out there by unsuspecting former FTX customers. That's one. Two, FTX bankruptcy process seeking to claw back $71 million from FTX's life sciences arm. FTX and SBF specifically were very keen on funding a lot of life sciences research that could potentially do much good for the world, but FTX unwound, and now the bankruptcy proceeding is trying to get back as much money as possible for its many creditors. A couple of nuggets here. One on the OPSEC end, one on the slow march toward justice. I'm going to throw it to Will for his initial thoughts on this double shot of FTX news.
Yeah, cybersecurity, not interesting stuff, but it'll get your ass, so you better pay attention to it. That's all I have to say for that story. The other one is a little bit more interesting to me because it does involve a lot of money. We've seen a few headlines like this, so I'm kind of like lost in the malaise of so many FTX headlines trying to claw back funds on behalf of its previous customers. There's been stuff with BlockFi, there's been stuff with 3 Arrows Capital, there's been stuff with other partners out there. As you've seen this piece, they've even included stuff about celebrities, right? Where they gave a lot of money to celebrities, the Tom Brady's and the Steph Curry's of the world, and I think FTX kind of wants that money back to pay back its customers and maybe even pay back all the lawyers that they're paying right now to go through this Chapter 11 proceeding. The question for me is when can you get this money back and what's the reason for it? Because if FTX was operating as a legitimate business, as it sort of was before November of last year when things started falling apart so quickly, then it's just a business transaction, right? And just because it went into Chapter 11 afterwards doesn't really necessarily mean anything. From my understanding, it's typically like 90 days prior to the declaration of Chapter 11 is when some of these funds can be clawed back, but there's restrictions on that. We've seen, or I guess all of us have become somewhat familiar with Chapter 11 proceedings because there's been so many over the last 2 years. But I have a hard time believing that some of these funds can be clawed back because that certainly was earlier than that 90-day period. But hey, I'm no legal expert on the show, so let's give it to Jen, who is our legal expert.
I think if you have the funds and you have a stand-up business and FTX comes and asks you back for those funds because they want to pay back their users, I think they owe users something to the tune of $8 billion. You probably want to do it if you can, just for the PR. If we look at what the lawyers said in this filing, Will, they said, while purporting to make these investments for altruistic purposes like pandemic prevention and preparedness, Bankman-Fried, in fact, pursued these transactions because he believed that doing so would generate goodwill and amass political capital and influence for himself. So that's one of the reasons why they've given for trying to get back this 70 some odd million dollars. Will, you pointed to that $700 million number we learned that they're trying to get back from those two celebrity connectors. So it feels like they're just going after everyone who took money from Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX.
But when does it end, right?
Put a good argument behind it, and maybe they'll get some of those funds back. I think the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art actually did give back $550,000. They agreed to return it. So I think it ends when they've got an answer from everyone. They've been able to get some funds back. I think desperate times call for desperate measures.
Let me throw this at you. You read that. Okay. That quote from the lawyer who said that Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to do a mass clout for his company. What CEO is not doing that in crypto? What CEO is not trying to amass clout? Lots of these companies do this, right? Lots of them have sponsorships with sports teams, have sponsorships with influencers. Like everyone does that. So that's not a rationale for clawing back funds in any sense. I'm sorry that FTX went under and that people lost funds, but those were legitimate business transactions at the time, even if they were exorbitantly overpaid, which I think all of these were, like $700 million just to get celebrity connections. That's crazy. You didn't need to do that. And there was a lot of criticism at FTX at the time for doing so, but it doesn't mean that you can go back and claw back all these funds because, they inked the deal. That's who was at the helm of the ship at the time. I don't know. Zach?
I think it's funny. Lawyer, Will.
Lawyer's gonna lawyer. John J. Ray, man, he's not playing, dog. He's coming for that money no matter what. I think this is funny because it also it reminds me of that. Remember that Vox piece where like the reporter like published all the DMs with SBF, and he's like, all us woke Westerners, we're just saying the right, liberal shibboleths to make everyone like us. This one kind of is that a little bit, right? Like SBF was sort of hitting all the right buttons to get the world to think, oh, this guy, he's an upstanding CEO. He's out here doing good in the world. And this funding of life sciences and COVID research was kind of one of those ones that in retrospect is one of those right shibboleths that SBF talked about when he wasn't under the impression that it was going to be made public shortly thereafter. So yeah, it is funny to kind of look back and remember some of these statements and then see how it intersects with the court of law as it relates to the bankruptcy proceeding itself. So it is a bit funny to watch this be unwound piece by piece. The empire shattered in shambles. Alameda FTX empire, man.
Down bad.
What a story. What a story it was. Still going on. Anyway, also, if you're looking to file a claim in the proceedings, remember, September 29th, I believe, is your deadline. That is a real known fact, despite potential phishing attacks and whatnot. So that's a public service announcement. Get that in by late September if you want to be in line. Anyway, Jen, I'm tossing it to you.
Yeah, well, I just want to point out about the phishing attacks. These are potential phishing attacks, right? They're not confirmed. The email address is one that is attached to FTX's customer service. And so it could be legit and it could also not be legit. So these tips we give you about phishing attacks are not going to work here. Proceed with caution. Wait for more information. That's my public service announcement on the phishing attacks.